The Golden State Warriors went into this NBA trade deadline acting like a team that still believes its championship window is open. They didn't just kick the tires on a few role players or float around the edges. They went hunting for one of the absolute biggest prizes in basketball, Giannis Antetokounmpo. That was the dream. By the time the deadline buzzer sounded, reality looked very different. Giannis stayed in Milwaukee, and the Warriors walked away with a very different kind of headliner. Former All-Star Kristaps Porzingis, in a move that caught a lot of people off guard, but not Stephen Curry. Behind the scenes, Golden State spent serious time trying to pry Giannis away from the Bucks. We're talking about a two-time MVP, an NBA champion, and one of the most dominant two-way forces in the league. If you follow the NBA the way I follow both the NBA and the WNBA, you know those kind of players basically never change teams in the middle of the season unless something has completely collapsed. And that clearly wasn't the case in Milwaukee. According to multiple reports, including from Shams Charania, the Bucks made it very clear. Giannis was not on the table. Not for Golden State. Not for anyone. Once that sunk in, the Warriors had a choice. Either stand pat and hope internal improvement is enough, or pivot to the next best high-impact option they'd been tracking. Over the final 24 hours before the deadline, they shifted hard into Plan B and locked in on Porzingis, a 7'3" big with all-star credentials, elite shooting for his size, and a long list of questions surrounding his health. To get the deal done, Golden State sent Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield to the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for Kristaps Porzingis. That package says a lot about where the Warriors are mentally. Kuminga was one of their most intriguing young pieces, full of upside and athleticism. Hield, while newer to the team, is one of the purest shooters in the league. Giving up both is a real price. In return, the Warriors are betting that a stretch five who can protect the rim and space the floor is exactly what they've been missing next to Stephen Curry. On paper, the fit makes sense. When Porzingis is healthy, he checks three boxes Golden State has been chasing: size, rim protection, and shooting. You don't find many bigs who can block shots on one end and then step out to the three-point line and drag opposing centers 25 feet from the basket on the other. We've seen in both the NBA and WNBA how dangerous that combination is for any offense built around a star guard. It opens a lane, pulls defenders away from the paint, and turns simple pick-and-pop actions into nightmares for opposing coaches. But you can't talk about Kristaps Porzingis without talking about durability. The numbers are what they are. Heading into this move, he'd already missed 13 straight games and had suited up only 17 times this season. Last year, he appeared in 42 games. That's barely half a campaign. The talent has never really been the question. The question has always been, can his body hold up long enough for a team to build something real around him? The Warriors decided that with Giannis off the table, it was a risk worth taking. Part of that calculation comes down to his contract. Porzingis is on an expiring deal worth $30.7 million. That's a massive number, but it comes off the books quickly, which actually gives Golden State some financial flexibility. If this experiment works and he fits beautifully next to Curry, they can talk about a new deal or a sign-and trade. If it doesn't, they're not locked into a long-term mistake. They can pivot again in the offseason, potentially opening up room for another kind of big move while still trying to maximize whatever is left of Steph's prime. Stephen Curry, for his part, sounds genuinely excited about the addition. He gave his first public thoughts on the trade after the Warriors pulled out a gritty 101-97 comeback, went over the Phoenix Suns. Curry didn't play in that one, but you know he was locked in watching how his team competed. Afterward, when asked about Porzingis, he kept it simple but positive. He talked about being eager to see what KP brings, about liking the fight the Warriors showed that night, and about the process of learning each other as the season goes on. He even joked that he's learning some Latvian, leaning into Porzingis' background and showing that he's already thinking about building chemistry off the court as well as on it. But Curry also added something important. He hopes, first and foremost, that Porzingis can stay healthy enough to actually do what he does best on the floor. That line tells you everything about how the Warriors are looking at this. They believe in the fit. They believe in the upside. But they're not blind to the risk. Curry also referenced Porzingis' championship experience. pointing out that he and veteran forward Al Horford have already won a title together in another context. Different league, different situation, but that kind of background still matters. Being part of a championship run, even outside the NBA, teaches you how to handle pressure, how to prepare, how to lock in when the margin for error is almost zero. For a Warriors team that has leaned on its own championship DNA for a decade, bringing in someone who's tasted that level of success, even in another environment, fits right into their culture. From the Warriors' perspective, this trade is clearly about more than just the next few weeks. It's about trying to retool on the fly around Steph without fully blowing things up. Klay Thompson is older. Draymond Green is older. The days of the 2015, the 2018 Supernova Warriors are gone. What's left is a core that still has talent and experience, but needs the right kind of help to stay relevant deep into the playoffs. A mobile, shooting big has been on their wish list for a long time. They tried different looks with guys like James Wiseman. They've run smaller lineups with Draymond at the 5. Now they're going with a very different type of gamble. A 7'3" shooter with an injury history, but also with a ceiling that, in the right situation, could make them look very smart. Of course, not everyone around the league is convinced this moves the needle. Kendrick Perkins, never shy about giving blunt opinions on ESPN, made it clear he's not impressed. He said he legitimately forgot Porzingis was still in the league because of how little we've heard his name this season. For him, going from Steph and Giannis conversations to Steph and Kristaps feels like going from a blockbuster to a mid-tier rental. In his words, it doesn't do much for him at all. Perkins also floated the idea that this deal might be more about money and cap flexibility than it is about winning right now. In other words, from his angle, Porzingis might be less of a missing piece and more of a placeholder, a contract that can be moved or allowed to expire to set up a bigger swing in the summer. If that's how it plays out, you could see this as the Warriors acknowledging that the true next era around Steph might not fully take shape until the offseason. And honestly, that tension is exactly what makes this move so interesting. Is Kristaps Porzingis supposed to be a real impact piece for a playoff run? Or is he a test drive, a high upside rental that lets the Warriors see how a different style of big fits with Curry while preserving options for later? The answer might depend on two things: his health and how quickly he meshes with Golden State's system. From a basketball standpoint, the potential combinations are fascinating. Imagine Curry and Porzingis in high pick and rolls, with KP popping out to the three-point line. Defenses already freak out when Steph comes off a screen. Now add a 7'3" shooter who can hit from deep and force the opposing center to follow him out of the paint. That's either a layup line for cutters or wide open threes for everyone else when the defense scrambles. On the other end, if Porzingis can stay mobile enough, he gives them shot blocking in ways they haven't consistently had during this post-Kevin Durant phase. But again, that phrase keeps coming back: when healthy. Warriors fans have seen this movie before with bigs and with veterans who look perfect on paper but can't stay on the court. Across both the NBA and WNBA, we've watched teams build beautiful, if everything goes right, models around injury-prone stars, only to see those plans crumble. Golden State is rolling the dice that their sports science, their load management, and their system can get the version of Porzingis that looks like an all-star more often than not. There's also the emotional side of losing Jonathan Kuminga. He was one of the few young players on a roster who looked like he could be a legitimate bridge between the old dynasty and whatever comes next. Trading him signals, pretty loudly, that the front office is still prioritizing the present over the future. You don't move a player like that unless you truly believe either that he doesn't fit your long-term plan, or that your star's window is just too important to waste. In this case, it's probably a bit of both. So where does that leave the Warriors? They're heading into the stretch run of the season with a new-look frontcourt, an aging but still dangerous core, and a fan base divided between optimism and skepticism. Some people see the Porzingis deal as exactly the kind of creative swing a team in their position should take. Others look at Giannis rumors that went nowhere, see KP's medical history, and side with Kendrick Perkins, wondering if this is more about contract and cap sheets than actually helping Steph win another ring. What we know for sure is that all eyes are going to be on how Porzingis looks in a Warriors jersey. If he stays on the floor, defends a rim, hits open threes, and buys into ball movement and unselfish style Golden State built its success on, This could end up being one of those moves that looks much better in April and May than it did in February. If he's in and out of the lineup and never quite finds a rhythm, it'll be remembered as a transitional step on the way to whatever big plan the Warriors front office has cooking for the summer. Either way, this is one of the most fascinating experiments in the league right now. You got Stephen Curry trying to squeeze every last drop out of his championship window. You've got a front office still chasing stars like Giannis Antetokounmpo, but forced to pivot when reality sets in. And you've got Kristaps Porzingis, a former all-star with huge talent and a complicated track record, dropped right into the middle of it all. So I want to hear from you. Does this Golden State Warriors trade for Porzingis make sense to you? Given where Steph and the franchise are right now, do you think Kendrick Perkins is right that it doesn't really move the needle? Or are you in the camp that believes, under the right conditions, Porzingis can change the look of this team and keep the Warriors in the mix in a brutal Western Conference? Drop your thoughts, your predictions, and how you grade this move. Because whether Kristaps Porzingis becomes a cornerstone or just a stepping stone is going to be one of the key NBA storylines